So after your travels, you started sort of getting involved with sort of charity work, am I right? Sort of different project linked to charity work as well. You did the body of work to bad a children's hospital, am I right?
Good research, Jason.
Not bad, huh? And then I'd like to jump a little bit because I'm pretty sure there's a few years gap, but I'd like to jump to the shipping forecast because the shipping forecast is for me, I mean, it's one of my favorite books, and I'm not saying that because I'm in front of you now, but it's something that is your first body of work, which is like solid in terms of execution, in terms of project as a project. So, what the question I'm asking behind that is, I'd like to ask you whether did you have, and I want to come back to the aspiration. I mean, at the time when you started working on the shipping forecast, did you have in mind a very specific sort of willingness to become like a Magnum photographer? Because you were aware at the time of Magnum and all the sort of agencies and everything, and the influence of Tony Ray Jones in your work. So were you driving toward that consciously to become a Magnum photographer?
I'm really sorry, but I'm going to just have to say no to all of that. No, absolutely not.
Go for it. I mean, you stressed the question.
No, I never had any aspiration to be in Magnum until I actually applied.
Okay.
But we'll come back. I guess we'll come back to that later. So the shipping forecast was really only born because I started teaching. So as you say, I'd done all this charity work in the mid-80s, but it was extremely difficult to make a living, you know, and I was pumping more and more of my own cash into making these projects because, you know, back then I thought photography could change the world. I thought I was doing something that was important, but you know, we have to remember that in the mid-80s it was extremely difficult to get a book published. I mean, it's hard enough now, but it was almost impossible then. If you wanted to have a gallery exhibition and you had worked for a newspaper, you couldn't have an exhibition in a gallery.
The world between the editorial aspect of photography and again sort of...
I remember when Wolfgang Tillmans won the Turner Prize, and you know, in his acceptance speech he said, I'd love to stay up and celebrate with you all, but I'm paraphrasing here, but I have to do a job for Nike tomorrow. And that was the moment when I for me anyway, but I think for many people it changed, where you know, artists didn't have to live in garrets. It was possible to do commercial work and to do your own work at the same time, and you shouldn't be judged on that. But in the 80s that was absolutely impossible. If you were supposed to have a private income, I think, if you were going to have an exhibition. So it was very, very difficult. So the traditional vehicle for documentary work, because I'd found myself increasingly becoming a documentary photographer, was through the media, through newspapers and magazines. But in the 80s that was extremely difficult because they were completely in the hands of the advertising industry. This was in the middle of the Thatcher years. So, you know, I was making all this well-meaning work, but I couldn't get it published anywhere. And I was having small exhibitions. Well, actually, the Children's Society show went to quite large venues, but you know, I was just going backwards and backwards and backwards. And then I ended up with a very large Barclaycard bill, which I couldn't pay, and I was facing a court case. And so I decided to give up photography and instead enrolled to become a carpenter. Because my friend George was making a nice living as a carpenter, and I thought, well, maybe I can learn to do that and just be an amateur photographer. Because to all intents and purposes, I was an amateur, because I wasn't. If the definition of professional is making money, I wasn't doing that. So, and then somebody out of the blue called me up, took me out to lunch, and just said he believed in what I'd been doing and trying to do, and he gave me this £200 out of his own pocket, his own money, and he said, just go and have one more go. I just started courting with a woman called Jo, who I'm still with, the mother of our children. There's a Freudian slip. The mother of our children, and and we're still together, and just engaged recently as well, after 30 years.
Very
and,
nice. Congratulations.
But her family came from East Berlin, so I had this idea I would fly to Berlin and go and meet her family and do a little photo essay about life behind the Iron Curtain. And I arrived in Berlin, went out for a walk, and it just happened that was the night the wall
9th
fell.
of November,
Yes,
1989.
exactly. And so I was there, and I was one of very few photographers there. You have to remember or imagine a time before Facebook, before Instagram, before Twitter, any of these others, and so I was, I was able to ship the pictures back quickly, and they were published again and again and again. I cleared all my debts in basically one night's work, and 25 years later, this bottom book
amazing.
here, I've self-published a book of those Berlin pictures. So then suddenly I was like the talk of the town amongst the British photo press. Press photo, the world. And I got 3 years of regular work for newspapers and magazines between 89 and 92. But I just realised, I think because I'd been a bit of a maverick, I'd been I had my fine art background, dare I say, and then the work I'd been making, and then suddenly working for newspapers, it just didn't feel right to me. I found that we were doing too much of sitting around talking about what kind of car we were going to buy next, or a new sofa we were buying next weekend. I just thought I didn't become a photographer to do that. It's very easy to fall into that trap, especially if you're earning regular money. And then I was offered this teaching post on a new course in Brighton, a degree in editorial photography. It shows how long ago it was, because of course there's very little editorial market now.